Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. I got requested in the comments to talk about another Johnny Test episode. Um, More specifically, the episode Fat Johnny. It seemed like a little familiar. That's the weird thing with watching this show is like some of the episodes have seemed kind of familiar, and maybe I've seen them, but like I won't remember stuff. So it's kind of like watching them for the first time again. Um, I also had gotten asked to like redo the other video with like images and kind of going more in depth, but I decided not to. Well, I also kind of just don't feel like putting the images in there. In these, I'm just keeping it as like the title card and stuff. This one I can go. And I'm not gonna redo the other episode because a lot of my like talking about TV shows or movies and things on this channel, like the way I talk about things, is kind of just more like my reactions to things than anything else. But this one I can give like, like a bit more like a actual like summary of the events and then going into my reactions of stuff, just because this one I actually preferred this episode over the Johnny Itis one, just because this one felt like it was a bit slower of a pace, kind of had more room to breathe. I'm assuming it was also within the 11 episode, not 11 episode, the 11 minute time slot and stuff, because it's like, but I wasn't able to like keep track because it was like the second half of an episode. I had to like kind of scroll through a bit to find it. But I'm assuming they're like the same length, but this one felt a bit slower, and and it's like a bit less action packed. I don't know if I thought it was funnier. I feel like they were kind of the same in terms of humor, but I think I liked this one more. So yeah, I'll go over what happens with the episode. So Johnny, he has, well, two goals with this. The first one, the more apparent one, is he's trying to buy this video game and he doesn't have enough money for it. And he ends up trading in a bunch of games and he doesn't make enough money. He ends up conveniently with $3, which is the exact amount to donate to this cat shelter, which is a thing that like keeps popping up throughout the episode. It's only $3. It's not much, but every time he refuses, and this is like a whole episode with karma as well, because there is an overweight worker at the game store that Johnny makes fun of, and the whole episode being about karma, where Johnny, because of because Bling Bling Boys in this episode, he's my favorite character in the whole show, by the way. So it's nice to get an episode with him. Um, he has these tests. I mean, the sisters also have a test, but it's like two different things where they're like trying to start a band, and they end up making Johnny famous. But then Bling Bling Boy's test is these nutrition bars that would make him buff, but instead they make Johnny overweight. And then combined with like the thing with the sisters, um, he ends up becoming like this famous rapper, um, where he's like making enough money, but things keep happening where he's not able to. Even when he gets like a physical copy of the game through being famous, he's not actually allowed to play it. Um, and it's just because he keeps being a jerk. It's specifically that he has to donate to this cat shelter. I thought it was going to be like he was going to be mean to like more and more people and stuff, but no, it's just that these girls, these two like Girl Scout equivalents or whatever, keep showing up to get money for the cat shelter, and Johnny refuses every time, and then by the end, he wants to go back to his normal weight and just wants to play the game. At this point, he's kind of figured out how the karma works, where he donates the money and it pays off in kind of a goofy way, where he gets sent all the way back to Bling Bling Boys. Like, I forgot he lives on a freaking volcano lair, like some kind of James Bond villain, and he ends up eating the nutrition bars or whatever it is, but it's mixed with this like monkey growth serum, which ends up putting Johnny back at his normal weight. Where it's like he finally does a good action and then gets kind of paid back. It's kind of like a very simple lesson of karma, really, where it's like Johnny does something positive, like one thing positive or negative, and then the opposite thing happen, or no, well, if it's a bad thing, something bad happens to him. If it's a good thing, something good happens. So that's not the opposite. Never mind. But I find it kind of interesting because I feel like if it was kind of, people do good deeds in real life, or like a bad deed, and it's like one bad deed doesn't suddenly make you, um, doesn't make you bad, but at the same time, it's like one good deed doesn't outweigh like a bunch of bad deeds. But they're trying to keep it simple here, but it's almost like on a scale in a sense, like it has to be kind of equal. But that's like pretty much like the whole description. Oh yeah, and then constantly throughout the episode, like Dookie's entire role in this is he's just following around Johnny and keeps every time something bad happens is just like, yep, that's karma. Like the only thing he really does is he like teaches Johnny the concept of karma at the beginning. Um, but then throughout the episode, he's constantly just kind of saying the same thing over and over again, which was really annoying. He's sort of just kind of there. But yeah, I'll kind of just talk about my thoughts on this. But these are all short episodes, so I don't really have like a ton of notes. But there was like things that I thought were funny and stuff. Um, like Johnny, I mentioned he ends up getting $3. It's from trading in like an entire, like he has like a giant pile that he's carrying with both hands, of like these games to the game store, and he thinks he's gonna get like the $45 that he needs to buy a very specific game, but instead he gets $3. And I was kind of thinking about like how people, I'm like, this sounds like it's the average experience trading and selling games at GameStop, which I've never tried, but like from what I've heard from other people and people online, where it's like you don't really get enough money in return for like all the games you bring. Like you see Johnny with the giant pile and you think like, oh, he's gonna get a bunch of money, but it's like $3. And then the owner, the worker, whatever at the game store is like, oh, we can also like throw in a dance pad or whatever, and it's like stuff that Johnny, isn't gonna use or care about. Um, at first, I thought actually, because the owner makes a comment about the dance pad, of it being like aerobic girly exercise for like a Dance Revolution game, and I was thinking like those games are really good exercise, but then the comment changes to something about like, oh, kids need exercise, because like as someone that regularly exercises with dance games, not specifically Dance Revolution, but like with the Just Dance games, actually it really does like help with exercising, and you do kind of build up a sweat and things. So I'm glad that's like sort of included with this, of like, hey, they are actually kind of helpful. um, I like that when they leave the game store and Dookie, like Johnny has like his first bout with karma, and Dookie has this book that he's telling Johnny about, and it's a book on karma that's just called Karma for Stupid Morons. I just think the title is really funny. I'm assuming it's supposed to be kind of like a play on those yellow self help books, the ones that are like insert topic here for dummies, but just having it phrased as like stupid morons makes it more insulting, but like also funnier. I feel like those for dummy books should change their title to Stupid Morons. Um, Probably sell more. Um, and then that's the point when like the Girl Scouts trying to get money for the cat shelter first show up. And there's something about the like incredibly cheerful voice delivery of Johnny saying like cat shelter. It's like when they ask him like, will you donate money to the cat shelter? And he's like, cat shelter? I hate cats. Bye. It was just really funny to me with that, the way that line was delivered. He sounded so cheerful, being like, I hate cats or whatever. Um, yeah, that was funny. And then of course he immediately gets attacked by a bunch of like random cats in the alley. Um, and then yeah, Bling Bling Boy shows up. I remember that he was really rich. I didn't remember that he was an inventor too, or that he had a crush on Johnny's sister Susan. I don't remember if they like ever get to date or anything. I'm assuming not. Um, where like the whole reason Johnny's there in the first place is his sisters like forced him to go there to give Bling Bling Boy a note. And then him and Johnny, they end up eating the stuff that makes them like buff, but they actually looked kind of like they end up becoming muscular and taller and whatever, but they actually look kind of grotesque, where they have like their super big like cartoony heads on these like buff bodies, but it's in a way where they just look really weird. It looks like you could like crack them in half or something. And then Johnny's face also, I think, like changes styles as well, where his like, his eyes are normally really big, and like the big blue circles in the eyes, like the pupils or whatever, like taking up a lot of space. But then when he becomes really buff, um, his eyes end up shrinking and moving like more up on his face. It looks really weird. So I'm glad that didn't last long, actually. And then throughout the episode, they're also saying this thing of like calling people fat, but it's either with an F or with a PH, and they always end the line with like, "There's a difference." Like I know the F for the fat is like referring to someone that's overweight, but the PH fat, I actually don't know what that refers to, so I didn't really get the joke, which is kind of a bummer because they're like constantly saying it throughout the episode. Um, Let me see what else. So then Johnny ends up becoming famous like almost immediately. I not even really for being like a talented performer or anything, but just because he's overweight and a talented performer. Because I guess the like talent people are looking specifically for people that are overweight. And then there's this whole bit where like um, every time Johnny goes to perform somewhere, there's like a group of girls that are like screaming and chasing him, and they end up destroying his video game, and he doesn't actually get the time to play. And I like that every time it happens, it gets shorter and shorter to the point where the girls like don't even show up on screen anymore. You just hear screaming and Johnny like freaking out. That was pretty funny. Um, and then he finally decides to donate the money, but not out of like the goodness of his heart, because this is Johnny Test. He's not going to have a change of heart, but he's just like, okay, fine, we'll do the karma thing, and I can go back to getting to play the game or whatever. And I like that he donates the money, and he's telling Dookie like, see, nothing happened, and one of the girls gives him this pointy pin, and it was so like comically pointy at the end and like really long too, and she like touches him with it. I assumed he was going to like pop like a balloon or like start deflating and he'd end up back at his normal weight, because I feel like that's usually what kind of happens with these sorts of jokes, but instead he ends up, it gets like crazier because, of course it does. It's a pretty crazy show, where he ends up flying across the city, not like a balloon, but it's like if you threw a ball in the sky, and then he ends up in the sister's like teleporting machine, or it's not really like teleporting, it's like some kind of like rocket thing, and it ends up flying him to Bling Bling's island, and he conveniently lands right under this like mechanism that combines the monkey serum and the food bars, and it ends up falling directly in Johnny's mouth, and he goes back to his usual weight. I feel like that is kind of the interesting thing with watching this show is you think like, oh, the joke's gonna be this, and not only does it end up being something like completely different, but also just something way more like complicated or weird or whatever. And then there's these talent people that show up, and they take and they're like, okay, Johnny, you're not fat with a PH anymore. We're gonna ruin your career, and where are we gonna find a replacement? And then Bling Bling Boy takes Johnny's replacement. And I like at the end he's performing and he's like singing this song about Susan, and Susan sees it on the TV. It's like the final line of the episode of her saying something like, yeah, I'm still never going on a date with this guy. And I'm assuming she never does. I'm assuming it's like one of those kind of jokes where it's like one character likes another character, but they will like comically never get together, which I'm fine with. I feel like they probably wouldn't be into each other as like a couple anyway. But yeah, this was still like a funny episode. I liked it better than the other ones. I think I just kind of prefer like the slower paced episodes. Like the other one was more action packed and kind of just very fast paced, and like that's sort of fun too. But I feel like it allows the jokes to be like kind of funnier, and the dialogue doesn't have to be so fast as well, where it's because there's so many like quick cuts and like what is that, the sound they constantly use in this show, the whip crack or whatever, and sometimes it just goes so fast that you're like constantly hearing it. But here it's a little more chill, so yeah, I prefer these kind of episodes. I don't know if I'll watch more Johnny Tests, depends. I don't know if I'm asked to and stuff. But yeah, this one was good. All right, bye bye.